Welcome to Workstyle Stories, because life changes and every life is different. This week we are talking about epilepsy, we're talking about a regimented structure of work, and we're talking about well-being and the role of nature in that. And to talk about that, we are joined by Anneli. Welcome, Anneli. Tell us a little bit about you, so where you're from and what you do.
Well, I'm originally from Cheshire, so I'm a northerner, but I've been stuck down in the south for the last 25 years, desperately trying to get back, but not seeming to be able to manage it somehow.
It looks pretty good from where I'm sitting.
It is, it's lovely. I'm in a very nice spot, so I'm quite lucky. And very lucky during lockdown as well, so it's been good.
And what sort of work do you do, Anneli?
I am brand communications and copywriting in sports, lifestyle, events sectors. And been a bit challenging lately, but still pressing on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been doing that for quite a long time, freelance, haven't you? So how long have you been freelancing for, and what was the sort of the thing that made you choose to do freelance work?
I've been freelancing about 20 years, which is very long in anybody's book, actually. And I have to say, I've been very lucky over those years with, very rarely been in a situation where I haven't had any work, so I have been very, very lucky. But I kind of started with the usual. I went to boarding school, and I found that with waking up to a bell and having a shower to a bell and eating to a bell, it was very regimented. And then when I went, university was a lot different. Obviously, it was a lot easier, a lot freer. But then I only had a few years at university before I ended up going straight back into that regimented life, which I absolutely hated. It just didn't work for me. And from day one of going into a PR agency, I just felt really confined. And I didn't really understand the lack of flexibility. And that was 25 years ago. I didn't understand that then, and I still don't understand it now. So that was kind of one of the driving forces for me to look at a different way of working. Because it just didn't suit me. I've always been an early riser. I get up very early. I like to do a lot of work in the morning early.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because so as someone who's raised in a very regimented way at boarding school, you would think that you would be naturally well suited to a fairly regimented pupil teacher style work environment, but that's not the case. Is that just talk to me a little bit about that. So is that because you wanted more freedom now that you were an adult, or what was the thing that didn't really work for you?
I think, conversely, it's a bit strange, but I do really thrive on a routine, but it's a routine on my terms. And I think that's a different thing. It was very much being told. I'm just not very good at being told what to do, let's be honest. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Well, and I think that therein lies part of the problem with the traditional structure of organisations, the hierarchies that exist within them, the rigidity that comes with them, and as you say, the lack of flexibility. Flexible working, we could talk about it for a long time. It's been around for more than 50 years, actually, as a concept, and yet still hasn't really had the sort of impact or change to working structures that it should have had, and that's very much what we campaign for within the Workstyle revolution, and pushing Workstyle as the solution, because flexible working hasn't done it. It exists within an inflexible system, so the problem is the system. But anyway, that's enough from me. I want to hear more about you. So let's talk about so you've been freelancing a long time. Let's talk about how that's been for you, and how you've managed that around other aspects of your life.
Well, I have epilepsy, so that was kind of another driving factor for me in terms of how I manage my life, because it's a very personal illness and everybody has different triggers. And again, it doesn't fit into a 9 to 5. At an early stage in my career, I wasn't, fully controlled on the epilepsy, and let's face it, anyone who's lived in London and has to go on the tube, how stressful it is on a normal day. It's just stress personified. You can't handle it, and by the time you get to work, you're stressed out, and then you've got to do a full day of working for somebody else who, let's face it, they don't really understand what your work style is. So and then if you add in a disability, a disorder, a chronic illness, any of those things onto that commuting journey, it just makes it more difficult. And with something like epilepsy, it does bring with it anxiety. You know, when there are times when if it's not controlled, that you are anxious all the time. Where you go? What are you going to do? And there was a day, it was one day in the winter, and I'd only been working really in agencies for 4 or 5 years, and I had an episode on the tube, and that changed everything. And I just said, that's it, I'm done. I'm not commuting. But the problem then you have is that when you have seizures, you then lose your driving license for a year. So you're forced onto public transport. It's a really vicious circle. So it was just one of those things, and I said, this is the day that everything changes. And that was it. And I went home and I wrote my resignation letter. I luckily walked away with a client, which was very lucky for me. And then the day after I started working freelance, I got a phone call from Nike asking me if I'd like to help them with some PR for their new golf business, which was brand new to them at the time. And I said, yeah, why not? Absolutely. I mean, not many people get a call from Nike on their second day of freelancing. So
absolutely, no, it was
an opportunity.
Was obviously meant to be, and that episode was obviously changed your life in a way, and maybe was a sign, the sign you needed almost to make that call, to take matters into your own hands and hand your notice. And everybody needs sometimes a push, don't they, to make the decision they know they need to make, but feel too afraid to, because it means sacrificing some security, some safety that they've become accustomed to, or that they believe they need.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It is that, I mean, the fear of wondering where your next paycheck's going to come from, that never goes away. The imposter syndrome, it never goes away. You know, all of these things. However, when I balance what I've got against what I could have if I was working for a corporation, my life wins every single time. I'll take the good days and the bad days. I'll take the late paychecks, because I get to run my life my way, and that's my work style. Yeah,
and I think all credit to you. It sounds like you've managed to set up a work style that really works for you, for your epilepsy, but also for the type of person you are, who wants a bit more freedom than the traditional structure can afford. So tell us a little bit about what your work style is like now then. So what do you do? What does a typical day in Anneli's life look like?
There is no typical day, unless you count the animals, and that is a typical day. But I'm up very early. I'm up around 5:30 every day, winter or summer. I usually walk the dogs first, so even in the dark, I quite like walking in the dark, so that's okay. And then I'll do the horses, then I'll sit down and I'll work for 2 or 3 hours. And by then, people are just getting into work, so that's fine for me. And then, I just see how I go. Sometimes I can sit and work all day. I'm really flexible with clients. I will always say, if you need me, just call me. I will be there. I'm never going to say no. And so I like to be flexible. I make that very clear to them, anybody I work with from the start, that, I am flexible, but this is how I run my life. And, you can contact me in those hours. I might not reply straight away, the usual flexible work thing. And then, typical day. I tend to get a little bit tired in the afternoons, and whether that's because I'm up early or whether it's a side effect of other things, medications and stuff, I don't know, but that's always in my downtime. And then I'll work again in the evening. I have to have a very fine balance for the illness, for my mental health, really. And for me, that means being with the dogs. That means going out for a ride. And if that happens to be at lunchtime, and I say, what, I'm done, I'm going out for a ride, I can just get up and walk out. And if things are getting me down, or I've been writing all day, or dealing with a particularly different client or journalists, I just think, no, I'm going to stop for an hour, and I do, and I walk away, and that time for me is my thinking time. I just let go of everything else, and I think especially with the horse, lots of people who ride will say the same thing. With a horse, they live in the moment. You have to leave everything behind and be in the moment, and that's just such great therapy.
I think it's absolutely incredible the way you talk about the role that the animals play in your life, in your well-being, the way you fit your work around when you're at your most energetic, when you do your best thinking. It sounds like you've cracked a fantastic work style. It sounds like you've been doing it well for a long time. I know that you've been episode 3 for quite a long time as a result of that, which is brilliant too. And Anneli, I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your story with us. It's been great to meet you. We've been Workstyle Stories, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.